Okay, and now starting the December 3rd, 2020 Mount Pleasant Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Kane, will you take roll?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll just remind everyone as we take roll, if you could please indicate your city, county, and state, your current location for the record. Commissioner Daly?
Present, Mount Pleasant, Isabella. Was that what you needed?
And state.
Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Friedrich?
Here, I'm in Marion, Iowa.
Commissioner Honig?
I'm here in Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Horgan?
Hello, I'm in Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, Michigan.
Commissioner Irwin?
Yes, President, City Mount Pleasant, County is Isabella, State is Michigan.
Commissioner Kostreva is absent tonight. Commissioner Leash?
Here, City of Mount Pleasant, Isabella County, State of Michigan.
Commissioner Ortman?
Present in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, Isabella County.
Commissioner Rice?
Here, I am in the city of Mount Pleasant, the county of Isabella, and the state of Michigan.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly?
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich?
Aye.
Commissioner Honig?
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin?
Aye.
Commissioner Leash?
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman?
Aye.
Commissioner Rice?
Aye.
Madam Chair, that passes 8-0.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is approval of the November 5th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly?
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich?
Aye.
Commissioner Honig?
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin?
Aye.
Commissioner Leash?
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman?
Aye.
Commissioner Rice?
Aye.
Madam Chair, that motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is Zoning Board of Appeals report. Commissioner Friedrich.
We have not met for the past 2 months.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is communications. Mr. Kane.
Madam Chair, there were no communications in your packet tonight, and we have not received any electronic communications this evening as well.
Thank you. And next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone from the public that would like to comment.
We still have nothing in the public comment email.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll close public comment. And then next item on the agenda is staff report, anticipated January Planning Commission meeting agenda items. Mr. Kane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For January, we do have one submittal already. It is a special use permanent site plan review for a Class C medical marijuana grower at 801 Industrial. So that'll be coming to you in your January meeting. At this point, that's the only item I am aware of with certainty that'll be on that agenda, unless you take action tonight, or rather, depending on the direction that you provide staff at the work session tonight, we may have an ordinance amendment to introduce for a public hearing in January as well. For my staff report, I'm going to go through I've got actually a lot tonight. I wanted to provide everybody with an update on the referrals that have come out of the Planning Commission recently. You'll recall that you have sent 2 text changes and a rezoning recommendation to the City Commission. All 3 of those items were approved by the City Commission. You also held a public hearing and made a recommendation on the 2050 master plan. And presumably you've all already heard, but that master plan was adopted. We are working with McKenna and Associates to wrap up the final document. There's some things we need to do, like add the adoption date to the document and integrate the adoption resolutions. So we should have that on the project website very soon. And then we'll begin working on distributing that plan to all of you and to the entities required by state law. in the next week or so, watch your email. I'll be sending you a link to the 2020 Community Improvement Award Survey. We're just putting the final touches on that to get those nominees before you for consideration for commercial and residential awards. I would hope to have your feedback so that I can let you know who was selected at your January meeting, and we can go ahead and get those awards produced as usual. Second to last item tonight, I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce you all to Laura Delameter. You'll recall that Becky Murphy retired from the Planning Community Development Department this week on Tuesday. And so she's enjoying, I'm sure, a very restful first Thursday for the first time in several years that she's not here with us for the Planning Commission meeting. And we are so excited to have Laura joining our department. She's been working with us on and off over the last month as we transitioned. And many of you may recognize Laura if you've been to City Hall much or come in to pay a water or a tax bill. Laura's been a longtime member of the team here at City Hall. And so we're real excited for her to move halfway down the building into our work area and start working with us. Laura, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Just say I'm excited to be here and hope I hit the ground running.
So if you have any questions for us, Laura's telephone number will be the same as Becky's. You'll probably start to see more emails from Laura in the coming months. So we're welcome to Laura. And last thing on my list is I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Commissioner Horgan, Vice Chair Horgan. This is her final meeting with the Planning Commission. Her second term of service on the Planning Commission ends this month, and she's opted not to seek reappointment. And so just wanted to express my appreciation to Vice Chair Horgan for 6 years of really great service to the city and the community in your role on the Planning Commission. And I will speak for myself only and say I will miss you and just appreciate your time. We did, since I can't virtually present you with a plaque, we did, I don't know if you have it handy.
Oh, I don't. It's downstairs. Oh.
Already hung on the wall, I'm sure, but we got Susan a plaque to recognize her service. So just ask everyone to join me in thanking Susan for her service.
Thank you, Susan.
Oh, thank you, guys. I'll miss you.
I'll miss you too.
So Madam Chair, that's all I've got in terms of staff report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Do we have a motion to adjourn to the work session?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? And Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Daly,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Honig,
Aye.
Commissioner Horgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin,
Aye.
Commissioner Leash,
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rise.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we are adjourned to work session.
Thank you. And I'm guessing no one needs a break between the regular session and the work session. Okay. And now calling to order the work session for December 3rd, 2020. Mr. Kane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I'd just like to express my appreciation to everybody for your patience with the fact that last month, my understanding is most, if not all of you, did not receive the paper version of the work session packet in your hard copy packets that were delivered to you. And so I recommended that last month's work session topic be postponed to this evening. So thank you for tolerating that oversight on our part. Tonight's work session, I have included 2 topics for discussion, which I think we should be able to cover pretty easily. The first item is a referral from the City Commission. You will recall that over the past year, we've had a few referrals from the City Commission that have come out of the 2019 housing report that was produced by the Planning Department and basically analyzed owner-occupied housing in the city and other housing regulations and made a series of recommendations. That aligned with some 2019 goals that were set by the City Commission. And another goal, one of the other goals from 2019 was for the Downtown Development Department to look at the mix of retail housing and office uses in the downtown and make recommendations to strengthen downtown. One of the recommendations coming out of that reporting process was to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance that would allow for ground level residential in certain areas under certain circumstances. And so that's the referral that's coming before you tonight, is to have a conversation about ground floor residential requirements. Just in general, historically, the city of Mount Pleasant has really only had one mixed use district, which was in our downtown. That was under our old zoning ordinance, the C2 zoning district. And that was the primary area of the community where residential, commercial, and office uses were all permitted. Under our current zoning code, we have many fewer non-residential districts, and all of those districts allow for a mix of office, commercial, and residential within the city. The new code uses special requirements to put some limitations on those zoning allowances within certain areas of the city. And so one of those special requirements has to do with allowances for ground level residential. In the area of downtown Mount Pleasant, where ground floor residential historically has been prohibited, with the new zoning map that was adopted in 2018, that area was reduced. So where the old C2 district in its entirety prohibited ground level residential at any location, the new zoning code only prohibits ground level residential within really the core of downtown, the historic core, where you typically would find 2- and 3-story buildings. The code also implements the same special requirement or prohibition on ground level residential along a portion of South Mission Street. This is an area that was historically zoned C3, which was a commercial district that did not by right or by special use allow for residential uses. It was only through the Mission Redevelopment Overlay Zone that was implemented in the mid 2000s, or late 2000s rather, that there was some allowance under some very special circumstances for residential uses to be permitted along the corridor. And even in that situation, those residential uses were required to be on the second floor or above until an amendment was made to that section of the code in, I believe, 2015, which allowed for residential ground floor uses as a transition to adjacent zoning districts. So the long and short of it is, in Mount Pleasant, we have a long tradition and history of requiring ground level commercial uses in certain areas of the community, and in certain circumstances also permitting upper level residential uses. This recommended text change is coming forward to you because there's been some changes in the way that retail and commercial properties work over the last several years that may make a blanket prohibition on ground level residential really not the best approach from a policy standpoint. And I've outlined some of those in the memorandum that was included in your packet tonight. But essentially, there are certain cases that staff feels like ground level residential might be appropriate even within the areas where that's currently prohibited. And that's primarily in places where buildings, due to their current configuration, or perhaps a future building upon construction, where there's significant depth to the building, where the frontage along the main corridor, whether it's Broadway or Main Street or South Mission Street, where that frontage exists, staff continues to believe that having commercial or office uses on the ground level is valuable and important to having a vibrant commercial corridor. However, when a building reaches a certain depth, there becomes less and less utility and viability for that commercial and office space the deeper into a building you get. And there may be an opportunity in some cases to provide some flexibility on the ground level, to provide some ground level units in the rear. This could have the benefit of, number one, providing for additional places for people to live in these areas. And we know there's a lot of valuable benefits to having more residential uses within commercial areas in general. Two, it provides an opportunity for people to have ADA accessible units in some of these buildings where they were developed in an era where access was not really a strong consideration. And so providing for some ground level residential use would provide for some ADA units to be a possibility. And three, this would provide more flexibility for those building owners where they might be sitting with a significant amount of ground level commercial space, and they might be able to put it to more productive use and draw a more steady rental income by having a residential use on a portion of that ground level. So staff's recommending that the Planning Commission consider making an amendment to this special requirement within the code to allow ground level uses within, I should say, ground level residential uses in these areas within some certain limitations. One is that we would recommend that there be a minimum of 50 foot of depth of commercial space along the frontage of any property before any residential conversion happened. So for instance, if we had a 90-foot deep building, the rear 40 feet would be eligible for use as a residential unit, but that front 50 feet would be maintained as a commercial space. And we came up with that depth primarily by just looking at commercial spaces within the community and seeing kind of what the rough average depth of those spaces was. And 50 feet seemed to be about right in line with what an average space depth is in both new construction and also in historic construction in our downtown. The second requirement we would recommend implementing is that if there is a residential conversion on the ground level, that commercial frontage continue to maintain access to the rear for deliveries, waste management access. And this is really primarily so that those spaces can continue to be serviced at the rear, so that we're not moving garbage containers or delivery trucks out into the road, into the public realm or onto the sidewalk, that those remain in an alley or a rear parking area, which is the area that both our zoning code would require them to be located in, but also for a variety of reasons, including aesthetics, would be a preferable place for those items to be located. So I'm interested in any questions or feedback the Planning Commission has on this concept. If you're open to this concept and if you have any parameters you would like me to explore, including in a potential zoning ordinance amendment, I'd welcome that input. If you're comfortable with taking this item forward, I would come back to you in January with a draft ordinance for your consideration to potentially set up public hearing for the February meeting. So that's my overview, Madam Chair, on this first item on our work session agenda, and I just welcome any questions that the Planning Commission might have.
I do have one question, Jacob. The city staff have any idea how many residential units this might potentially allow? If the first 50 feet is remaining commercial, I mean, we talk about maybe 6 potential residential units or more than that. Do we have any idea?
That's a good question. I don't have a firm number. I will tell you that this would not make every property in downtown Mount Pleasant eligible for a ground level unit.
Well, most of the units on Jockey Alley would not qualify for this because they're too skinny.
It wouldn't come down to width of the building. This is
it does for access.
It could, yeah. The access could be a limitation, but we feel like it's important that in those cases, I mean, the purpose here is not to make every property in town eligible for ground level residential unit, but it's just in certain cases where we have a larger building with more gross square footage on the ground level. So to your example, which is a great observation, Commissioner Irwin, where you do have a narrow building, it may not make sense for this conversion to take place. Where I think there's a handful of places in the downtown that it would probably be ripe for this type of conversion. I think where you'd probably see the larger quantity of opportunity would be on the South Mission Street corridor. It'd be dealing with more redevelopment opportunities, so it'd be more of a purpose-built scenario. And I think that we've looked at and entertained development concepts in the past 5 or so years that included some residential uses, particularly to the side and rear of redevelopment projects. And I think this would be consistent with those concepts that we considered then.
I have just a question about, or comment about, if it doesn't fit downtown, or there's only 1 or 2 properties that it actually fits for downtown, it really fits South Mission or Mission Street, why wouldn't we just rezone that to CD4?
Rezone what? Commissioner Rice, could you clarify what?
You were just saying that there was only 1 or 2 buildings downtown that this would actually fit, that it actually fits Mission Street better. And my question is, instead of changing CD5 zoning to have special uses and special things that have to come and have to be configured, like that are difficult for the average person or the average business to understand, why wouldn't we just instead rezone those areas where this actually fits to be CD4, which already allows for that?
Because CD4 doesn't allow for that, does it?
I want to clarify that the CD4 and CD5 both allow for ground level residential uses where this special requirement doesn't exist. So it's the special requirement that's on the map that is limiting the opportunity for ground level residential, not the zoning district itself. So a special requirement basically is functionally like an overlay. So where that overlay exists on the map, which you can see in your memo on the final page, you can see those red dots that are overlaid on the map. It's the red dots that represent the special requirement area. So it's a special requirement that says ground level residential is prohibited, not the zoning district itself.
Okay, so in those special overlay areas, why don't we just fix that instead of adding a new requirement?
Well, that is what's being proposed. I think the reason for if we remove the special requirement, then ground level residential would be a permitted use anywhere along the corridor under all circumstances. And what we're suggesting is it probably doesn't make sense in all circumstances. It would probably make more sense when it's located at the rear of a building and when those front commercial or office areas maintain access to the rear, so that it wouldn't be in all cases this would be permitted. It would just be in cases where those two conditions could still be met.
Okay.
Jacob, how do you get to your apartment?
That's a good question. So the apartment, I think under this concept, you would probably have a side or rear entrance to that apartment, depending on the building configuration. So if you were in a building, just for example, on the 100 block of South University Street, there are some buildings that have side access to an alleyway. So that side access to the alley could provide for apartment access. You could also, similar to how some of the upper floor apartments in our downtown get access, you could provide access through a door that goes out to the front of the building. You could have a common lobby or corridor that ran out to the front to provide that hallway access, or you could take access from the rear. So in a downtown setting, that'd probably be from an alley. On a Mission Street corridor standpoint, that'd probably be from a parking lot. So a good example of that would be the Campus Commons development that has the Chipotle and the Smoothie King. I was blanking on the name. The Smoothie King business. The apartments above those businesses take their access from the rear.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can't be walking through the store. So I just wanted to know how you get there.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jacob, I think the way you laid it out in your presentation sounded great. So I'd be interested in seeing that next month.
Yeah, I have no objection in finding more revenue for businesses. There might be other kinds of benefits of having different users in the area.
I think it's important too to keep in mind that for the most part, the properties that we're discussing haven't permitted ground level residential uses in 50 years, if ever, and certainly never by right. So providing an opportunity for them to be allowed by special use, number one, maintain some oversight by the Planning Commission to make sure that you're comfortable with the application of that ground level residential, and enables you to provide some conditioning. So if you feel like it maybe doesn't make sense in a particular area, unless there's some changes made, it gives us a chance to look at it. And I think to Commissioner Rise's point, if a few years go by and we have a few projects approved through this process, and the Planning Commission's comfort level is really strong that, you know, this makes sense and we don't have problems with this, you could always entertain an adjustment to the regulation that would permit it by right, rather than as a special use in the future. But this gives us kind of an opportunity to trial run it and see how it works, see if it's something that people take advantage of, make sure that we've considered all of the potential downsides as well, and adequately address those in the special use conditions, and kind of move forward from there.
Won't there be a lot of investment costs on the parts of businesses that want to open up apartments and plumbing and kitchens and?
Could.
It probably is going to be dependent on the property. The biggest cost, generally speaking, with a mixed-use building is going to be fire suppression. So for somebody who already has that fire suppression,
Right.
this might really just be a matter of expanding that system. There may be some firewall cost in separating that commercial and residential portion on the ground level, and then your general remodeling costs. But I think like anything, some buildings will probably be very conducive to this type of conversion, and others would probably be very difficult to convert and maybe may not make financial sense. But we do know over the years, and this is, I would say, over the last 15 to 20 years, there have been owners in the downtown who've expressed interest in having some flexibility with the residential prohibition within the downtown as well. And so this would be an opportunity just to see how that would go, and if they wouldn't offer some benefit to them and to the city.
I have a question in regards to, I mean, I really like this idea, but when we are looking at the rental properties and the residential things, we often look at the requirements that they include a certain amount of included parking area for them. So if it is a business like in the downtown, do we need to consider that? Because if there are already rentals in the upstairs of the downtown, I mean, how do they accommodate that if it's not really already a built-in area for parking?
Well, I can tell you from an overnight parking standpoint, we've got more overnight parking spaces than we do overnight parking permit holders. We've never had to restrict the number of overnight parking permits that are issued in the downtown. Where we tend to run into more of a supply and demand challenge is with the business permits during the day. And with a business use, you know, just for example, if you converted half of the downstairs or the half of the ground level, of a building in the downtown district, and you had one business in front and an apartment in back, in all likelihood, there might be one or two cars associated with that apartment that would come and go each day. But that business is probably going to have at least 1 to 2 employees plus their customers coming in and out of downtown. And if it's a larger business that could host more employees, I think it's probably going to be a 1-to-1 offset on that parking demand, if not ultimately going to be in favor of the conversion, actually having less parking demand on the downtown during the daytime than the apartments. And then our overnight demand, just by the nature of our downtown, there's more than enough capacity for those overnight residential folks to find a place to park.
Well, yeah, let's go there.
Do we have any idea how many vacant apartment units there are already downtown?
Generally speaking, downtown runs at about a 0% residential vacancy. The apartments that are in our downtown generally rent as fast as they go up for lease. We have some level of commercial vacancy. I don't have the number in front of me. I want to say it's like 5 to 7%, and then about a 10 to 15% underutilization of downtown space, where we have some properties that aren't actively marketed for sale or lease that are vacant, and primarily in upper floors where, like for instance, the 200 East Broadway site, where the upper floors have been vacant for a couple decades now, but the ground level does have some utilization. So there's been strong and healthy demand downtown for housing units, and our housing studies that have been produced for the city, as well as for private developers who've expressed interest in the downtown, have all shown strong demand for residential units. Well, if there's no further direction, I will prepare a draft ordinance for your consideration in January, and would welcome further feedback at that time before bringing it back to you for public hearing.
Sounds good.
So the next item on tonight's, and the last item on tonight's work session agenda is our annual discussion of the 2021 work plan and training goals. I suppose it probably is self-evident that implementation of the 2050 master plan is something that should be on that work plan for 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and beyond. there'll be several years of work that will come out of that master plan process. And I look forward to working with all of you on moving some of those items forward over the next year. I did want to see if there's anything else that folks were hoping to see on the 2021 work plan. Beyond that, the only other item I had that I think I definitely want to get before you is the updates to our bylaws and rules of procedure. Commissioner Leash and Chair Honig have helped me over the past year in identifying amendments to those documents that would be valuable. I would like an opportunity to meet with them briefly to walk through those, and then hopefully at a work session in the not too distant future, bring those back before you for discussion before bringing them to a regular meeting for consideration. Well, hearing no suggestions, I will tell you there's a few other items that have been kind of kicking around on the text change lists and have never risen to the top priority of the day. One would be, I would like to have a discussion at a future work session with the Planning Commission on our development thresholds. And this is both in terms of administrative review. We've had the administrative review process in place for a little over 5 years again. And you'll recall that is a capacity that you bestow in me at your discretion. And so we've got some current parameters established around that administrative review process. And I would like just touch base since it's been a while. If everyone's still comfortable with that threshold, or if there's any adjustment that anyone would like to make to that moving into 2021. The other item that I think would be a valuable discussion topic is our general site plan and special use permit thresholds. The way our code is written currently, which is the way our code has been written since at least 1984, is that essentially any change to any site triggers a site plan review process, and any change to any special use site triggers both a site plan and a special use permit process. It's not uncommon for zoning ordinances to either have levels of review that might provide for a less stringent process for minor projects than for major projects, or that might provide for a de minimis level of change to a property and some level of square footage or some specific types of change that can be approved either through a more streamlined process or at a staff level. And I think this would be worth some conversation because it is, I think, good for customer service. I think it would kind of streamline what has to come before the Planning Commission to some of those items that require some more thought and consideration. And I just think it's good practice. So I'd be interested in having that conversation with y'all at some point in the future. And then lastly, we've had some folks approach the city about solar farm installations. And so I think discussing, as we've seen some solar projects come before us, as well as some electric car charging projects, if we want to make any special considerations for those in our code, and perhaps even some incentives through the procedural requirements for those in order to encourage them in certain areas of our community. And so those are some items that if there's Planning Commission interest, I may bring forward at a future work session. And certainly if there's other items that arise now or in the future, please let me know and we can look at scheduling them for a future work session.
I'd be interested in hearing about or going through a work session about any of and all of those topics. I think I brought it up, I don't know, it was a year or two ago, just in noticing that we're going to have more applicants looking to install renewable energy, sources of sorts, whether it's those solar panels, and you had the one solar farm permit earlier this fall, as well as that electric vehicle charging station at the Sitco on Pickard. There's only going to be more of those in the future. And since those are kind of the genres of permits that we don't typically see very often, it might be good to be able to work through different kinds of scenarios assuming that even if it's not in the short term, we're going to have more of these in the long run on the planning commission.
Agree with that. I'd like to talk about that too.
Awesome. Well, the final portion of our last item is just to discuss training. So this is just your annual reminder. First and foremost, if there's any topics that you would like to be brought forward for discussion or brought forward as a training item, either with me bringing materials to you or bringing in an outside trainer, please let me know. In the past, we've had a community engagement training by MAP that came into the community. We had Strong Towns come to Mount Pleasant and provide some training to staff and to the community. And so I always welcome those suggestions. We do have money available for training that's just for the 9 of you. So if you see a training that's interesting, you all hopefully are getting your MAP emails and newsletters, and those are a great place to learn about training opportunities, as is your planning and zoning news that's usually in your hard copy packet every month. There's a lot of good opportunities out there. Just by the nature of my job, I've been to an awful lot of these trainings at least once, or have worked with these trainers. So if something sounds interesting and you want to know more, let me know. But we're happy to spend that money so that you can have the tools you need to do your job effectively as planning commissioners. So let me know. It's an especially, I think, great time to take advantage of training, because so many things that are typically in person with a really rigid schedule, and maybe they're only offered in Port Huron or Jackson or Marquette, are online right now. So if you're hopefully not like me and you're not spending most of your day on Zoom, you don't have Zoom fatigue. If you don't have Zoom fatigue and you think you want to take advantage of one of these virtual learning opportunities, let me know, because it is a pretty unique period to have all of that available. And I just lastly, as part of that training, in the past, we've sent 1 or 2 planning commissioners to the MAP conference in the fall. I am hoping that will be in person next year. So keep your eyes open for that. And if you think you'd be interested in attending that, add it to your calendar and let me know, and we will make the appropriate accommodations for you to attend. So with that, that's all I've got tonight, Madam Chair, unless there's any other comments or questions from the Planning Commission.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Do we need a motion to adjourn the work session?
One last roll call vote for the good of the order.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Mr. Kane, will you take a roll call vote?
Find my list real quick. Commissioner Daly? You're muted, sir.
Guess I wanted to leave early. Aye.
Commissioner Friedrich?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoig?
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin? I'm sorry, Commissioner Horgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Irwin?
Aye.
Commissioner Leash?
Aye.
Commissioner Ortman?
Aye.
Commissioner Rice?
Aye.
Madam Chair, we are adjourned. Everybody have a safe holiday.
You too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye, Susan.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Again, sorry for the delay, everybody.
Thanks.
No worries.
Hopefully, we'll get you next time.
No worries. Thanks.
Take